So I'm really excited to be reviewing one of these rooftop tents. I think they have the potential to kind of be quite a game-changing device for family car camping. It's interesting, as I started to research this, it kind of seemed like there were lots of different brands all reselling the same tent. So I started having a look around and found this original rooftop tent manufacturer in China, and they very kindly sent me this sample to make a video. And that's fantastic because it lets me answer all the questions I have about using a rooftop tent for family camping. So when you're looking at roof tents, you'll see that there are basically two different types. The hard shell like this one and the soft shell, which is where you've got just a sort of square tarpaulin cover that you have to pull over the tent after you've folded it away and then velcro it around the edges to stop stuff getting in. Just generally a real hassle to put up and put down, I think, and a lot of people they sort of show on Instagram, they might show how quick it is to fold out once the tarpaulins come off, but actually to take the tarpaulin off and put it back on again, a lot of hassle. And of course that tarpaulin is going to be filthy and dirty and you're handling it all the time, and then what do you do with it when you're taking it off? It's one of these things that doesn't really work with the potential workflow for something that's super fast to put up and down in the way that the hard shell tents do. Obviously in this car I can just stand on this and put this down, which is brilliant for accessing this, but I'm just going to use the ladder to show how you would do it if you didn't have the tailgate. What I'm going to do in a minute is find a dual carriageway and get this up to 70 miles an hour, and I'm going to wear these binaural microphones, which will give you this 3D sound, and you can really hear for yourself what the impact of the wind noise is like on this. The really cool thing about this company is they ship globally and they sell direct to the public, which, considering the size and weight of these things, is I think actually pretty remarkable. They come in this kind of pallet with plywood sides, and it arrived absolutely without a scratch, and surprisingly quick as well. I ordered it on the 5th of December and it arrived here in the UK on the 26th of January. But what's really interesting about this company is they actually have a warehouse in the US. So if you're in the US and you're ordering one of these, they'll ship it from there, and that brings the shipping time down to between 5 and 15 days, which is pretty amazing. So mounting this to your crossbars is really simple. They're basically these rails that run front to back underneath the tent, and then these little metal plates slide into that with the bolts inside, and then you just tighten up these hand nuts on that and then add some locking nuts on the end of those, and you're done. It's a fairly quick process. I think there are actually some quick release brackets you can get for rooftop tents. It's a fairly straightforward process, but obviously the size and weight of the tent means it's definitely a two-man job to do this, at the minimum maybe 3 or 4, depending on your height and strength, and that just confirms why I think this is a format that's going to work if you can leave it on your car the whole year round, and that's why the hard shell tents are particularly suited to this. I think what's interesting is if you're looking at a brand that sells both soft shells and hard shells, they normally have the soft shells quite a bit cheaper, but that's what's interesting about getting this direct from the manufacturer in China. It then makes this about the same kind of price as these soft shell ones, which really I think just destroys the case for a soft shell roof tent. Another thing with the soft shells, I think they just look pretty silly on a lot of cars. They're really bulky, they're so tall, and they're just big square with a flappy canvas over the top. Just kind of destroys the look of your car, and a lot of them are putting their branding and massive kind of logos all down the front and the sides of these things. I think it's just a bit of an eyesore on top of your car, and I think that's just not the case with this kind of sleek black hard shell type here. It just looks really cool on the roof of a 4x4 like this. So this roof tent apparently weighs 75 kilograms, and I haven't checked that, but it's interesting because most cars have this published maximum figure of 75 kilograms for what you can put on the roof when you're driving. Of course, technically speaking, that isn't allowing anything left for the weight of the crossbars that it's mounted to. So it's slightly over officially as a result of that. And of course, if you're putting a duvet in there as well, it's going to knock it over a little bit more. So it would be great just to see that weight come down a little bit so that you know you're within that 75 kilograms limit, including the crossbars. But obviously it's pretty close. You definitely don't need to worry about the weight, by the way, of the people sleeping in it, because you're not driving when anyone's in it. So that static load limit is obviously very different to the dynamic load. I mean, it really doesn't make any difference. There's no liability issue. Obviously, when you're parked up in a campsite, you can put as much weight on your own car as you like. What's cool about this roof tent is if you did have a car that does have a higher capacity, it actually comes with its own set of crossbars which you can put on top of the tent. So you could obviously put something like a surfboard on there if you wanted, and something that's as light as a surfboard. I don't actually think there'd be any issue with it lifting that up with that little bit of extra weight on the top either. So the price of these things is just over $900 US before the shipping. And that is just unbelievable value when you think about what you're getting here. And we're going to look at the build quality and all of that. And it's just incredible for the price. I really am impressed with the value for money here. The nice thing about having a warehouse in the US is if you're in the US, you can actually collect directly from there as well. and of course saves the shipping fee, which is a big chunk of your overall order. But even with the shipping cost, which for me in the UK was about £600 on top of that $900 for the tent, even with all of that included, that price is still way lower than the UK companies selling these under their own brand that have already been imported. Of course, when you're buying something from a website without getting a chance to see it, you can't really tell what the build quality is like. I'm happy to report that the build quality on this is absolutely remarkable. Every join has got this little sort of rubber seal, and the big chunky rubber seals all over it with really, really solid hardware throughout. It's completely watertight and a hard shell with these two big clasps that you just flick open, and then you just lift it about 2 feet and it will take itself up. The quality of the stitching and the upholstery is absolutely spot on. There's so much attention to detail and going on here, and this material is really tough. It's ripstop and coated. It's just super solid, completely waterproof. Obviously, to have it lift up like that by itself, it's got these massive gas struts down the side which are really solid. This really feels like a product that's been improved and iterated over time with lots of little adjustments. I've seen lots of other reviews of similar kinds of tents, and one of the complaints that seems to come up is that the ladder doesn't have a specific attachment point. This tent comes with 2 mounting points, one for the back and one for one of the sides, and you can position them wherever you like. It comes with that, and the ladder comes with the little hooks that clip onto it, already attached and ready to go out of the box. It even comes with 2 of these boot bags, which is really interesting because this is one of those things with the roof tent that's absolutely critical to the workflow here. If you haven't got somewhere to put your shoes after you come up the ladder, you don't want them in your tent. So this is one of these things that I think is overlooked, and a lot of these roof tents don't actually come with these, so you're left without a solution as soon as you bought it. So they're big enough for my Vivo barefoot boots here, a nice waterproof case and big flap over the top. Keep them dry and out of the way, ready to put on in the morning. Obviously this roof tent is only for 2 and there's 4 of us, so there is that problem to solve as well. But that's actually a really interesting area. A lot of people do this car camping thing where they have a sleeping platform in the car, again only for 2, which is why the roof tent plus that format works really well for a family camping for 4, with a plywood base that folds down, so you can still use the normal car seats in the daytime. At night time you just fold the plywood forward and you've got your full length sleeping platform in the back of your car.
Brilliant, solid as a rock.
In terms of aerodynamics, this thing is super quiet. It's sort of 60 miles an hour. You can just start to hear a little bit of wind noise, but it's very, very minimal. I just can't imagine that's the case with the big soft shell ones. I think maybe a lot of people buy the soft shell ones thinking they're only going to put them on the car when they go camping, and then they realize the reality of that is they're just so heavy and big, it's just not something you want to do, so they end up driving around with these things on the whole time, and I think that's the main issue. I'm really impressed with both the lack of wind noise and the lack of impact on the way the car handles with this on the roof. Quite surprising, you know. I thought, given the fact that it's so high up, your center of gravity when you're cornering and all of that, I was kind of expecting it to make the car feel quite tippy. It really doesn't. I mean, obviously this is a really heavy car, it's 2.7 tons, so the impact of additional weight on its kind of overall mass is minimal in this car, and I think that's probably contributing to why it kind of doesn't seem to affect it that much. Maybe a lighter car would be obviously more noticeable. But also it's such a low profile shape, the impact on wind noise is minimal. Even at 70 miles an hour, there's just a little bit of a wind noise, definitely nothing too serious and definitely nothing annoying like a whistle or anything like that. And below kind of 60 miles an hour, you can't really hear the wind noise from it at all. It's nice to see that it comes with a condensation mat as well as a super comfy, fully upholstered mattress out of the box. So this main opening at the back here has got this cover with mesh sides, and it reveals this sort of massive opening on the end here, which has got the mosquito net on the inside and then the waterproof cover on the outside. So I'm just going to put my boots off and put them in the bag here now. The design of the window and ventilation system is really well thought out. So this outer cover here doesn't actually close. The zip is for the mosquito net on the inside. That starts here and goes all the way around. The outer cover has a fixed rod across the bottom, and that is just kind of loose, overlapping on this bottom edge. So you've got constant airflow coming up through that gap. And of course, with this rain cover over the top there, this whole area is completely protected. And the fixed triangular vents at the top, you've got a really good solution to stopping condensation, which in a tent like this, obviously a single wall, completely waterproof outer fabric is a potential for being quite a problem. On the sides, you've got a slightly different arrangement with the mosquito net on the outside, which you can do up. And again, lots of good attention to detail. The whole zip is covered with a big overlapping area of the outer fabric. So it's going to be completely stormproof. I slept in this and the outside temperature was 5 degrees. I got zero condensation. It was literally bone dry. So I had one side sort of more or less completely open and the other side about like this with a little bit open. And you know, it wasn't terrible weather. It was quite still, but that was enough to keep this completely condensation free, because that then means if you're using a duvet or a quilt, you haven't got to worry about it touching the sides. And it's just a very nice little space here with this cover over here and this completely open. It comes with these interior lights, which is a nice attention to detail, and even this roof panel is lined with this soft touch fabric as well, the same as the material that is over the mattress here. Obviously, I think if you're camping in this in the summer, then you're not going to have any problems at all with condensation, because it's obviously the outer surface is that bit warmer. But even in this 5-degree test that I did the other night, no problems at all. And this whole tent is completely blackout. The fabric is really thick black fabric, doesn't let any light through, and of course the top panel is completely blackout as well. And that just means you haven't got to worry about wearing a sleep mask or anything like that. You are going to get that really nice, sleep-inducing, cozy, dark space here. Because of this hard panel on the top, it's a very solid panel. I think the sound of rain on this is going to be really nice as well. So you've got more storage on the sides with these little hanging pouches here, and 6 big panels on the inside of the roof, and of course the interior lighting that comes with it as well. Again, just fantastic attention to detail and lots of features for this price. And what's interesting is how much space is still left inside when you've closed it. I tested this with a 10.5 TOG feather and down duvet, which is a bulky thing. I spread that out and it had no problem closing. When I had a big pillow in here, it was just a little bit tight, but I reckon if I'd spent a bit more time organizing it, I probably could have moved that so the pillow wasn't overlapping with the duvet, and that would have then closed. So you can definitely leave the bedding in here without any problems at all. And that, I think, is pretty remarkable, because it is still really low profile when it's closed up. The overall experience is absolutely fantastic. So first of all, you've just got this lovely soft mattress that comes with it across the whole floor of the tent. So that's really nice just to be able to crawl into that, and you've got that waiting for you. And there is something really pleasant about being this high off the ground when you're sleeping. It just feels like a kind of treehouse. It's brilliant being this high. Really nice kind of climbing up the ladder and that feeling of just going up to bed. Really, really cool. And just all the while, you know that it just takes a few seconds to set up, so you can kind of think in terms of camping anytime, anywhere. I'm really hoping that through this year, it is actually going to allow us to genuinely get more camping trips into the year, just in terms of looking at the weather and going out for a 1 or 2 night weekend trip, and not having to wait for sort of school holidays to book in bigger camping trips. And I think that is just absolutely fantastic.